Welcome to Psychic Holistic Spotlight. I'm your host, Josie Way, and co-hosting with me tonight is Kathy Medeiros. As promised, we kidnapped him and held him hostage. We have Roland Comtois with us again.
Thank you.
We thought it would be nice to talk about how to support people who are grieving and how to support those who are crossing.
Those are two great questions, two great topics, and I think
a great expert to talk about
all
it.
of us are experts, really. We can explore the things that we can do to make someone's experience much more peaceful, right? Because if we're talking about someone who is passing, or someone who is ill, or someone who's battling for their lives, they're in a state of grieving as well. They're preparing to leave. They're preparing to leave their family. So there's a lot of support that can be offered during that particular time, as well as the support that's offered to someone who is grieving the loss of someone they loved. And so there's a lot of conversations that we can have about that.
Yes, I'm just thinking along the lines of previously people had the attitude of better not talk about it.
Yeah.
Now it's much better. We know for those who are going to pass and those who are feeling the passing, it's much better to allow the communication.
So I've always been an advocate of speaking about what's going on and telling the truth and sharing what you feel. And as a nurse, and I've been a nurse for 30 years, I think it is now. And so in my nursing career, when I've had a patient that was terminally ill or critically ill, and they were nearing the end of their lives, with everyone's permission, I had real, honest conversations about that experience for them, about what it meant to go through that experience and that process, and what it meant to be there. And I was adamant that my staff would give extraordinary bedside care, because that was important. It's an important part of life. There's another aspect of this. We have to see the holiness, if you will, or the divinity of that experience as well. We have to do that for the person that is passing, and helping them to find the peace that they need so that they can cross and pass with ease.
Yeah, in more ancient times, they were better able to deal with it.
Yeah.
The Egyptians did all sorts of rituals.
Ceremonies, yes.
Ceremonies to help their people cross.
Yeah. Well, I think in our culture, we weren't really talking about dying, death, afterlife. Those weren't part of our normal conversations, and they're now part of the story. I mean, there's conscious death, there's conscious dying, there's all kinds of programs and experiences that allow you to have a real, honest conversation about this experience. And as I said, as a nurse, I would be by the bedside of my patients, telling them the true, honest story of what was in front of them, and not holding back, and not stepping away from it, and not even being afraid of it, of really telling them the story. And I know that I've told you guys lots of stories before, but there's one story that I love, and I really want to share it with you again. And if you don't mind, I had a 90-something-year-old patient. I'll call her Mary for the sake of confidentiality, and she was in her late 90s, I think it was, and she was nearing the end. And I walked into the room, and she says, "Roland, am I dying?" Right. And she grabbed my hand, and I said, "Let's talk." And then we started having a real conversation about what she was fearing, and what was on her mind, and what was it all about for her. And we had some very beautiful conversations. And what it did was it gave her an opportunity to say what she really felt. Another story is when my mother was dying, when my mother was ill, we went to the back courtyard of the rehab place that she was at, and we sat. I'll never forget this. It was a windy day out. We were sitting out in the backyard in this beautiful place, and she reaches her hand to me, and she says, "I think I'm dying." And I said, "Mom, I think your time is coming." And we'd have these conversations, and she'd say, well, she wanted to reevaluate her entire life. She wanted to talk about everything. She wanted to make sure that she didn't leave anything out. And we had these wonderful conversations about who she was and what she accomplished, what she didn't accomplish. And I think those are important conversations to have when someone is at that place.
Where do you find the most common theme for people that when we're talking about grieving or dying? Is it like those religious beliefs, those stuff holding us back, the regrets?
That's a great question. Yeah, that's a great request. That's a great question. I think, there was an article recently that said 5 of the 5 things that people wanted to talk about near the end of their lives was, did they love their children enough? Did they have regrets? And if they were, what could they do about them at that particular moment? Did they accomplish everything they set out to do? Did they take enough time for peace and quiet and healing? And did they do everything they could to be who they were? So I guess the common theme really in that process is, was I enough? Did I give enough? Did I love enough? Did I do everything the way that I should have done it? And that's a very common denominator in many of the cases that I've witnessed as a nurse and as a professional supporter, an advocate, helping people near the end of their lives. So that's basically the scenario there. On another thought, and I may be jumping around a little bit, but I'm sure you can follow me. I'm sure everybody can follow me. One of the things that I write about in my second book, which is about grief and loss, is about really having honest, truthful conversations about death. And really coming to that place, and I think it's important that we acknowledge that we're sad, that I'm sad. I was sad when my mother was dying, and sitting in that courtyard with her. It wasn't like I was smiling, having a happy conversation. I was bawling my eyes out because I knew, and she knew, that our time in the physical experience was coming to an end. And we had to come to some place together, a place where there is peace, a place where there is love, a place where there is support for each other. And that's what we did. And that's what we should do for each other.
Yeah. I'm thinking thoughts about a person who has paid attention to the spirit in their soul throughout their lives is going to have a very different experience than the person who's suddenly facing death and has never really explored anything.
I think you're right. I think one of the factors is that they often say that they should have explored spirituality a little bit more. They should have understood what religion meant to them. They should have really looked at the idea of the afterlife. I mean, people do say that, near the end, and it's an important conversation to have. This is why I'm on the roads nearly 7 days a week talking about this stuff, because there are people out there right now that are facing their demise. There are people right now that are terminally ill. And then there are a lot of people out there who are suffering through grief itself. And the more that we talk about it, the more that you do shows about it, allows the global community to take a moment and really have a sincere conversation about it. People came up to me after my mother passed away and said, "Hey, what are you crying for?" Oh, I said, I'm crying because I'm a 50-year-old kid that just lost the one person who knew everything about me. I said, I'm crying because I loved her and our relationship was built in love. I am crying because I won't have that same opportunity in the physical world to call her and say, Ma, guess what happened today? I'm crying because the life that we lived together changed. It changed the moment she passed. The moment someone passes, our normal life changes. And we have to figure out how to live that life. It doesn't matter if you've lost a pet, a grandmother, a child, a cat. Grief exists. and all of those experiences. And what we really need is kind-hearted, loving, unconditional people to take the hand of someone and say, I'm right here with you. I may not have any answers, but I'm going to listen to everything you're saying. I'm going to be here for you. And I think that's more important than anything else.
It's very important. Sometimes words don't have to be expressed.
Right. That's true.
If you can hold their hand or touch them lightly on the shoulder,
Yeah.
If they don't mind that. Sometimes just to show that you're connected.
Yeah, and I think what you're doing when you're telling them that you're connected, you're teaching them that there is no boundaries between us, that what exists between us is just love, and that love is a palpable, tangible experience that we can carry with us moving forward. Mm-hmm. So when we pass on, that love that existed here is carried on. It's what we communicate with. Often people have said to me, when you're channeling, what are you really doing? Here's what I'm doing. I'm talking to the love. I'm really talking to the continuity of love. Because if the love was truly there, then that love becomes the voice of that moment. It becomes the energy of that moment, And so it's love that we're communicating with. It's not, yes, we're talking to the person, but it's the love that allows that conversation or that communication to take place.
The connected love between the two people.
Yes. It's that love.
It raises the frequency so that of the communication.
Yes.
You being loving and the spirit being loving, so you can meet.
If we have that knowledge that love is the great communicator in the afterlife, wouldn't we do everything in this particular life to love as much as we could, to really experience love? Khalil Gibran says that love only wants to love itself, that it only wants to love. The Bible said love endures, that it continues on, right? So if we understand that the source, that the great communicator is love, then wouldn't we do everything in this moment, right here, right now, everybody? Right now. Let's all do it. Let's all communicate with that love and energy right here, right now. What that does, it gives us what we need to have conversations when life changes, because life's going to change.
That's a guarantee.
No matter how you look at it, it's going to change. But here in this moment, if we all stopped, if we all took a second, took a deep breath, made a connection, felt peace inside, remembered the love, it would somehow propel us forward through the peaks and valleys of grief. One of the other things that I really want to mention before it loses me, and that is, if you have a friend or a family member that's grieving, I think it's important to call them a month later, 2 months later. We get it back into our lives and into our routine that somehow that person that's home grieving gets lost. And I think we got to create something or do something that allows us to reach back out and say, I'm right here for you. It may not be any more than that, and maybe that's all that's needed, but it's going to be enough that's going to transform that person's pain.
Yeah, because we forget that they're still in that process, that it takes quite a while. Yeah. And they run out of people that they can share it with.
Yes.
New people.
Yep.
So, but they need to say it more than once.
And the person that's grieving really needs to talk to get that stuff out. Right, to get that energy out of them so it doesn't become a block of energy within them, because grief has the power to do that if we don't nurture the grief or step through the grief, right?
Yeah.
Because walking around the grief or avoiding the grief is not going to allow you to step through or step forward.
Yeah.
Now, there's no time frame, though, for the grief, though, right? Sometimes it can last years, sometimes it's a few months.
You're right. I met a woman once whose husband died 25 years prior to meeting her, and I never saw someone in as much pain as I did her. And it was because she never looked at her grief. She put it under the rug and went about her life making believe that he wasn't gone, right? And that caused her great distress in her life. There's another challenge that happens, and as a medium, you understand, the minute you offer a message to someone out there, right? The minute I say your son wants to talk to you, the person I'm talking to has to come to the realization that, oh my God, my kid is gone. If I'm saying something to them that resonates with them, that touches them in the heart, that opens the doorway to that grief, they come to the realization, oh my God, my kid is really gone. And they have to reconnect to that grief again. And so instead of walking past grief, kicking it under the rug, it's imperative that we have conversations about it, that we talk about it.
Sometimes it's not simple grief.
No.
They have lost a husband.
Yes.
They don't drive, so they no longer they don't have someone who can drive.
Yes.
Some of them I've floundered. They've never done bills.
Yes.
They lose. As well as the main breadwinner.
Yeah.
Their entire lives.
So that's a great point.
Totally.
You're right. So grief is not just the loss of someone, which in itself is excruciating, but it's the loss of the life that you had with someone. It's the loss of the possibilities that existed. It's the loss of the future of what you would have had together. Yeah. And you trying to navigate that is a lot of work, and I don't think that people should do it alone. I just don't think people should do it alone.
They're not meant to. It's not a little gondola ride.
It isn't. I think we have to, support each other through that process. Can I just share a quick story? I did an event recently in Rhode Island, and a woman, I started talking about her son that passed away, who passed away very tragically, and it was a very intense story. And the second I said his name, the woman ran out of the room, because she came to the understanding and very consciously understood that her son passed away. And she looked at me like I was, like she had looked at a deer in the headlights. She was so in shock that her son had passed away. And then she ran out. I had my staff run out after her. I went out after her on the break. And, and she said, well, my mother told me, she said, that when someone commits suicide, they never are to be seen again, never to be heard again, and that they are stuck in hell somewhere. That's what this person said to me. And in that moment, that woman had to face her mother's history, her child's passing, her own belief system, her grief. She had to negotiate that in seconds. And that's why we've got to stand by each other's side.
Grief is a tough thing, unless we deal with it firsthand. A lot of times we don't realize the impact that it can have, even if you're not dependent on the person. Though that just adds to it, though. Yeah. And a very recent experience, though, that I've had some loss myself, and a friend of mine she had lost her husband earlier this year, and I kept checking in with her like every few months, though, and I had to tell her, it's like, there's going to be people that's going to tell you there's a time frame for grief. I told her, just forget about it, because every grief is different. Even if you have like 5 different losses, though, each one is going to be different. Each time frame is going to be different.
Right.
And when she started realizing how other people are going to be reacting, it's like, let me talk to her. Let me just see what she says, though, see what she thinks about it, kind of thing, And every time I see her, the husband always comes in. Every time. So she hasn't made that connection yet with him, and she's kind of at a loss. I told her, like, when you're grieving, though, it's a heavier energy with the sadness, and they're kind of like at the higher level of energy, though. So until it gets a little bit easier, it never gets easy. It never does. And I told her, like, until it starts getting easy, you're not going to feel them.
You're right. This is something that I also say in groups of people, is that it's someone will say, well, I can't feel my son or my husband or my wife or somebody. And I often say it's because the grief, as you just said, is that it's right in the forefront. And so seeing anything beyond that is a bit of a challenge. But we're there, all of us, to help each other navigate that experience of grief. Again, back to my book about grief, right? There is even some guidelines in the back of the book to help somebody. You know, so there are things you can do to help each other. There are things that you can do to help yourself. And there are things that we can do to be of support for each other during that particular experience. And I think, and I am believing this more than ever, that we got to stand by each other's side. We're not in this big thing alone. You know, that we're all a thread in the tapestry, as I've said before. We're all a thread in that thing called life. And when we support each other and we go through the process, it expands our spirituality, as I said before. It makes us stronger. And not only that, the act of giving, the act of serving strengthens our inner core, our spiritual core, and makes us better at who we are and what we are.
And also being on the receiving end of supporting that person, you can also feel a sense of accomplishment too, though, just being there.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes that's big. A lot of times we don't realize on that opposite end of being on the outside looking in, how much of a big difference that can make in the person's life that's grieving themselves. I
often thought to myself, is the person that is grieving chose that grief so that I could learn how to serve? Did that person in that life experience choose something or negotiate for something so that I could learn the process of unconditional love and the experience of being of service? There's a great book called The Little Book of Service. It's by J.P. Vaswana, and it's all about being of service. You know, so did that person who's in that difficult situation have that difficult situation so the rest of us could learn how to serve, how to love, how to be unconditional?
Some people, well, when you look at life, you sometimes wonder, people come as disabled or handicapped. You know, why would someone choose a life like that? But they offer others opportunities to help them.
I think that's the way it is. I mean,
it's a type of service.
It is. They're of service to the broader community. I'm in service. I'm learning about service because of the situation they're in, and as I have that ripple effect of growth, it somehow touches the people around me, and something happens to them, and that energy continues to grow. So, could that person be an advocate for the greater community, for the global community of support and love? Is that possible?
Yeah, I know. As I've gotten older, I can't do some things. And I can either be very frustrated and ask for help, or I can say, now is the time. I can give my kids, for instance, the opportunity to help me.
Yes.
And be grateful that I can do that.
And how amazing they must feel to be able to support you and to be of service to you. You know, that's an incredible reward, you know, for all that you've done for them. You're giving them the opportunity to be of service.
Sometimes I resist it.
I know. I'm sure that's true. Don't we all resist that a little bit? Don't we all have choice? We all have choice. We all stand at the same crossroads with the same opportunity to step forward. Some of us stay in the same place. Some of us move forward. I mean, aren't we all faced with that every day and every instant of our lives, that we're at those crossroads stepping through it? But maybe your situation is there not only for you to learn and grow, but for them to learn service, to learn something, and because they'll become better because of it, you know, because of that experience.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting way of living, you know, where we are all part of the story and we all help and guide each other through the experience, and you doing that for your kids, allowing them to help you if you choose it. Then maybe something wonderful could come out of that whole experience.
Yeah, we all have it's been written many times that we all are teacher and we all are learner.
Yes, that's for sure.
And when it comes to life, sometimes we're supporting others, sometimes they're supporting us.
Yes. Not to pick on your situation in particular, but people who are getting older go through grief because you're not in the same place that you were 10 years ago. I'm not in the same place I was 10 years ago. So there's some morsel of grief that we have to address at that particular moment of time. And again, my whole story is we got to get it out of us and say it and talk about it so it doesn't become an energy that sits in us and doesn't support us as we move through our lives.
Yeah, well, some of those energies actually make us ill.
That's for sure.
Yeah. They've proven any kind of stress can cause illness.
If you're online now or you're reading the papers these days, you're going to know that meditation is the name of the game. And they've been saying meditation is the name of the game for a very long time. We know with a little bit of quietness and meditation, it'll bring your blood pressure down. It'll take out that tension and that anxiety. It'll kind of restore balance to your physical being. It'll put things at ease.
Throw a little yoga in there, and you've got a good cocktail.
You do. You have a way to manage the journey. Now, I'm not saying I do yoga because I haven't done it yet, but I meditate constantly. I get into that quiet space, and in that space, it's almost as if my cells are regenerating, and they're like, oh, I could just imagine what's going on inside. My cells are like, woo, finally. You've been driving me crazy with all your anxiety.
Your little universe.
Yeah, because we're all part of that experience, And so meditation is a way to relax and to release some energy. Meditation is a wonderful tool for the grieving person to get them inside and focused on maybe their breath or holding their hands together or focused on something else, and it takes them out of that space of grief and moves them through whatever they're going through in that particular moment.
Yeah. Some folks have to hold themselves together during the initial grief process.
Yeah.
And because they've got kids, they've got households, they've got jobs, they've got all sorts of things going on.
Yeah.
And then suddenly something small will happen and the floodgates will open.
Yeah, and you're right. And not only they're experiencing the first Christmas without someone, the first birthday, the first this, the first that. And we're supposed to be there to guide them through the process and be there by their side. Help them out.
How can we reach you?
Well, you can go to RolandComtois.net. You can find me on Facebook. You can go to my website, check things out, and see me along the way. I appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you.
What are the changes you've
Thank you.
Yes?
What are the changes you've seen over the course of dealing with the grief? Like, is it people being more open about it, though?
Yeah, I'm seeing that they're being more open. And in my audiences now, there are 90% new people who are willing to experience the spiritual life and the afterlife. So there is more of that happening. And more people are really kind of wanting to talk about it a little bit more. They want to share their innermost thoughts and feelings. They want to know that what they're feeling is real and what they're feeling is true, that if they feel overwhelmed and they feel like they can't stop their crying, that's normal and natural. So there's a lot of that going on right now. And you're right, there are people talking about it more now than ever. But even more exciting than that, they're talking more about mediums more than they've ever done before. They're talking about spirituality more than they've ever done before. They're talking about meditation and all those other things more than ever.
Mediumship is one of the best ways to heal.
It is.
By connecting with your loved one in spirit.
Yes, you're right.
You're
right.
And, I know from several mediums very well with the show and through my, church attendance. And the good that you do is untouchable. It's so high.
There is a value to it, and not everybody sees that value yet, but people are seeing that value. They see the value that it supports someone through their grief. It supports them to their healing. It brings them from grief to peace, and that's really the purpose of mediumship.
Yeah.
So.
It's okay. It's time to wrap it up tonight. Please be with us. We have one more show with Roland, and keep following us.
You can always keep talking about grief, though, so that's like never ending.
We're on YouTube, and this show will be on YouTube.